Hello, everyone, and welcome back to AuDHD and Then Some. I'm your host, Ellie, and today I'm joined by the author, Susan Eileen. Susan has written 3 books exploring addiction, trauma, and recovery, with her latest book, Unmasking, focusing on how unsolved trauma can shape our lives, the masks we wear to survive, and how healing those wounds may change the way we see ourselves. Today's conversation is one I'm really looking forward to because we're going to explore the relationship between trauma, neurodivergence, addiction, masking, and identity. As always, this podcast is about curiosity and sharing different perspectives rather than telling anyone what they should believe. So, Susan, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here. I've been really enjoying your Facebook groups and your other podcast episodes.
Thank you so much. I normally meet people through Podmatch, which is like a Tinder. Do you have Tinder in America?
Oh, yes, we do. Yes, I was
Which is
on.
like, yeah, Podmatch is Tinder for podcasters. So actually, you're one of the first people I've met organically through just like Facebook and connections and stuff. So it's really nice. I feel like I personally know you already.
Yes, I know. That is, I've done other podcasts, but it has been people that I haven't interacted with outside of the podcast. So it is interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, it is interesting. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what led you into working in the trauma and addiction situation?
Well, as far as my career goes, I am a lifelong educator. I've taught
Mhm.
science classes and driver's ed and a number of things, but I'm also neurodivergent and had childhood trauma. And
Mhm.
those two things blended together to really put me at high risk for addiction. So
Yeah.
I did lose about 10 years to active addiction. I'm in recovery now, almost 7 years, but I really discovered my gifts in recovery, one of which is writing. So I did, my first book is about a 5-tier process to recover for those people that don't like 12-step programs. My
Mhm.
second book is a message of experience, strength, and hope. And the third book, which I'm most proud of, is about unmasking your trauma. And if you do unmask your trauma, you often find that you're neurodivergent underneath. And
I have to ask you, who's Freya?
Oh, Freya is a Viking god of love and beauty. And so one of the
Oh.
truths is that when you're masking, you're actually hiding your inner love and beauty accidentally.
Mhm.
When you end up masking, you end up hiding accidentally the best parts of yourself for various reasons. It's all well intentioned, but masking is pretty harmful over time to your physiology.
So when was you first diagnosed with, and what was you diagnosed with, can I ask? Was it a late diagnosis? Because for me, I had trauma as a child from 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and neurodivergence, but I didn't know I was neurodivergent until I was in my 30s and I'd had my children. So basically that neurodivergence was presenting as trauma, and it all rolled up into one ball of neurodivergence and trauma. So we couldn't tell what aspects of me come from the trauma and what aspects of me come from the neurodivergence. It was like one big ball. Um, do you know what I mean?
Oh, that's extremely common because you mask as a neurodivergent person and you mask as a traumatized person. The mask's so
Yeah,
different, but it does
yeah,
all sort of blend in together. Plus, the trauma changes the architecture of your brain, and the
yeah.
architecture of a neurodivergent brain is different. So, it takes a real trained professional to be able to tell the difference between complex trauma and some other neurodivergencies. For
So
sure.
sometimes they can present quite similarly.
Yes, they can. That's exactly the perfect word for it. They present the same, But when you
Yeah.
get to the root of what's going on, the
Exactly
root
that.
is different. Yes.
So when I went for my first diagnosis for autism, they said to me they couldn't diagnose me because one, they didn't know whether it was learnt behaviour from my father or whether it was nature or nurture, basically. And their other thing was they think that I need to work through some stuff and come back because they can't actually tell whether it's trauma or neurodivergence. When I went back, I'd worked on myself a lot, and they diagnosed me with autism. But the first time they couldn't quite tell what was from the trauma and what was from the neurodivergence, and also what was learnt behaviour from my dad's neurodivergence. So it must be kind of similar.
It is similar, and like you said, it'll affect every aspect of your personality, both the trauma and other neurodivergencies like autism. So what will happen is you might start getting treated for your autism, and then all of a sudden the trauma symptoms seem more apparent, or vice versa.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So you were diagnosed later in life.
Yes, I was diagnosed late 30s.
Hmm.
And really it was after I had my mother passed away. It really was a very traumatic time because of how she passed, and that's really when my mental health challenges started being quite severe and leading to time off from work and the unhealthy coping mechanisms of drinking and prescription meds abuse
Yeah.
and that kind of
Yeah.
thing. So, but yeah, late 30s. And it's very frustrating because now I do free healing journey meetings for
Hmm.
people, who are recovering from trauma. And really, the best medical care happens, with early diagnoses. And we're finding so many late diagnosed people that have lost so much time unnecessarily.
It's a pandemic, isn't it? It's like a whole pandemic. There is a
Y-
whole lost generation of men and women who I've discovered recently from Facebook and my groups and stuff. There's just a lot of us that have just realized, and it's too late. It's not too late, but there is a lot of relief.
Yeah.
You feel validated, but there's also a lot of like grief and what if
Mm.
that comes with it. It is a whole pandemic of a lost generation of people being diagnosed.
Yes, I think of my boyfriend, and he was diagnosed in school but never supported.
Yeah.
So because he was high functioning enough that he flew under the radar, but high functioning typically just means you're better at masking. You still
Masking, which is more harmful in the future, really.
Yeah, because it takes a huge toll on your body to mask.
Yeah.
If you're familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, your base needs need to be met. Food, sleep, reproduction, the basic needs to keep you alive need to be met before you can go on to really become your best self, right? Like you can't
Yeah.
become your highest self if your basic needs aren't met. And when you're masking, your basic needs are unknown often to even you.
What if you've been masking for, so I've been on such a journey, but I must say it's kind of the last couple of years only that I've really got to know myself. But I found that a hard journey because I don't even know myself. Like people are like unmask, but I've been masking for so long
Yeah.
that I don't actually know what I am or who I am or what I like, because I will like whatever my friends like. I will speak however my friends speak. If you came on and you speak well, I'll speak well with you. If you come on and you speak common, I'll be common. You know what I mean? It's I mask to whoever. So actually I don't even know what Ellie's real voice is or what Ellie's real handwriting is. I don't know the real Ellie. Is there a real Ellie?
Well, when you spend your life as a chameleon, it's hard to know the real Ellie. And you probably did. There are two different neurodivergent masking is different than trauma masking.
Yeah.
Neurodivergent masking is like behavioral mimicry, which is what you were just describing. If you speak slang, I speak slang. If you're speaking
Yeah.
professional, I'll speak professional.
Yeah, exactly that.
So you're suppressing stims, you're forcing eye contact, you're scripting conversations, you're overly adapting to the environment. Where trauma masking is about emotional suppression.
Yeah.
You're hiding your feelings. Whether you're hiding your feelings or you're scripting conversations, either way, you're not being your true self.
Yeah. So it could be from it. So it could be from my trauma, or it could be from my neurodivergence. It could be from a bit of everything.
Well, as you've pointed out, it really just sort of all combines into one big
Big
tangled
but
ball.
with one big tangled ball, and I can't tell apart which bits which.
Right. And it compounds because, being neurodivergent in a neurotypical world is inherently traumatic. We get constant
And
sensory
yeah,
bombardment, constant pressure to conform, constant social misunderstandings. All of this keeps our amygdala in our brain on high alert.
which is traumatic in itself, and
Exactly.
also you are then, and I really do think you are more susceptible to trauma from an outside force when you're neurodivergent as
Yeah.
well. I feel like, so not only is life traumatic because of sensory shit and everything else, life traumatic because you're kind of an easy target. I mean, I feel like I have been an easy target all my life, which has been really traumatic. So there's trauma coming from every angle when you're neurodivergent.
Well, there's been a lot of theories in neurodivergent spaces about neurodivergent people getting tangled up with some more toxic personalities like
Yeah.
narcissists and other.
Narcissists. Yeah.
Yeah. And, the theory is that when it comes to flirting, because neurodivergent people aren't really good with social skills,
Yeah.
well, neurotypical social skills, I should say,
Yeah. Just our own kind. Yeah.
and that we often don't pick up on flirting unless it's the absolute love bombing that you get from a toxic person.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah.
But a lot of people as well. So I get on better with guys than girls. I generally get on better with guys. I don't know what that's all about. I kind of feel more like a boy myself, to be honest. Like, so I kind of relate more to boys. And you know I'm kind of friendly how I would be to you, as I'm friendly how I would be to men. But lately I've had to mask it because a lot of people think that that comes across as really flirtatious. So I think there's also that aspect when you're neurodivergent. I feel like a lot of people think you're being flirty, but you're just being friendly.
Yes, yes, I've definitely had that. Again, the way we communicate is inherently different than the way neurotypicals communicate. So
Yeah.
we can get our wires crossed quite frequently. But I definitely relate to that being an easy target. I feel like I've been an easy target for toxic people my whole life. But
Yeah.
part of that, though, is when you're masking, you're not enforcing any boundaries. So as you unmask,
Boundaries.
yeah,
So much. Yeah.
as you unmask, it's really important to learn boundaries so that you protect your progress that you make. Because those boundaries are there. I say boundaries are the distance at which I can love you and myself simultaneously. That's my boundary.
That's a really good way to put it. And I feel like I that's been my major issue throughout life, is I have never ever had boundaries, whether that's down to trauma or whether that's down to neurodivergence. I know it's definitely down to my self-worth. So because I think that I am so shit, I don't do anything right, I'm so crap, so therefore I can't have boundaries because I don't deserve them. I need to take what I can get. And if someone was willing to give me the bare minimum, I'm going to take it because, I should be lucky to have that. So I think I've noticed with a lot of people, and I've tried to do a lot of podcasts lately on boundaries, because I'm noticing such a common theme with men and women that are neurodivergent, that they've never been able to put boundaries in place. And one of the main reasons is because of their self-worth.
Yeah.
So with my neurodivergent daughter, I wasn't clued up enough when I had my sons. I had them very young. They're in their 20s now. But with my neurodivergent daughter, what I try and do is I try and instill as much confidence in her as possible so that she knows that she's worth them boundaries. But I
Yeah.
feel as neurodivergent children, we wasn't taught we were worth them boundaries, because we were always like, oh, you're not doing it properly, or
Right. we're just perpetually misunderstood, really. And so we're
100%.
afraid of those boundaries. Like you said, we're afraid the boundaries are going to push people away, and we're already
Yeah.
starved for connection.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, that's a really good point. And as far as our self-worth, a lot of that is trauma based. In my healing journey meetings that I do, I we talk about, changing your inner critic to be more like an inner cheerleader. And like
Yeah.
one of the very damaging things about having an unhealthy parent is that unhealthy parent's voice becomes your inner voice in your head.
Yeah.
So if you had a parent that was really critical or toxic or emotionally immature, that becomes your inner voice. And now you have that, basically that toxic parent with you all the time.
How can you change that? And I don't say that to me because actually I don't know, actually maybe that is a part of my thing, but my parents are on a whole, they're not too bad. But I had my children very young and I didn't know I was neurodivergent. And everything I saw them do that was a neurodivergent trait, I tried to stamp it out of them because I thought I was being kind. I didn't want them to be like me. So every time I'd see them stimming or see them not doing something
Oh,
properly, I would constantly say, "Don't do that, don't do that," but not because I didn't love them, but because I thought, "Shit, I don't want them to be this bully victim." So I think for my children, I must be that, and I don't mean to be. I love my children more than anything, and I actually think I do love them more than many people love their children. I feel like that. I'm quite,
yeah.
I'm obsessed with them, but I must be that toxic parent voice in their head. So how can they change that?
Well, it's a lot of intentional work, really. I have
Yeah.
worksheets actually on my website that help you change your voice in your head, where, so that to change the voice from "I'm not worthy of boundaries," "I'm an idiot," "I'm stupid," to "I did the best I could with what I knew. There's room for improvement, but I still did okay."
Yeah.
You need to change your inner voice to be a voice of compassion and not a critical inner voice. Because having a critical inner voice is like having an invisible playground bully follow you around all day long.
Yeah, I think I've learned, I think that was the big change in me in the last couple of years. I think I've never been compassionate to myself. But since doing self work and specifically since finding out about neurodivergence, I think that that was the big change and learning the language like executive function and not laziness and all of that has
Yeah,
changed my inner critic of myself. And I think that that has made such a huge difference. Um, learning about neurodivergence, I think, and I think that that will make a lot of difference to all the late diagnosed people because they've been told that they're inherently lazy, or oh, why are you so slow, or why are you so such and such. And I think once you've got that language to, I think that that should allow them to be kinder to themselves.
absolutely. And oh, there was something that I just, well, and sometimes the masking is so intense, it becomes a whole personality type, like the
Yeah.
people pleaser or the martyr or the loner. I was
So the martyr is me.
I was the people pleaser. So I was overcommitting, saying yes when I wanted to say no. But
Yeah.
really, the core wound, or what you're telling yourself when you're a people pleaser, is if I constantly anticipate your needs, you won't hurt me. Or the loner is, if I'm completely self sufficient, nobody can reject me. Or the martyr is, I only have value when I'm helping and sacrificing for others. So, really,
Are the people pleaser and the martyr? See, I wouldn't know which one I am. I normally think I'm the or I was the martyr. What's the difference between the people? How do you know if you're the person that's the people pleaser or the martyr?
I would say the martyr is a whole nother level beyond the people pleaser, where you really do go into sort of active suffering to help
Yeah.
other people.
I would have set myself on fire, and I would think anyone that doesn't set theirself on fire for anyone else is a bad person.
Yeah,
I don't think that now. I don't think that
right.
now. But before I would say, okay, if you're a good person, why wouldn't you set yourself on fire for someone else? Like it didn't make sense to me.
But that quote laziness that we see is actually when you get to the point of overwhelm from masking,
Yeah.
your body just gets so worn down from masking. immense cognitive and physical load to not be your truest self. So authenticity feels lighter and happier and refreshing compared to masking. But laziness oftentimes is actually like a functional free state. If you were lazy, you would be having a laugh riot good time. If it's not a good time, you're overwhelmed, not lazy.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. When I'm being lazy, like I will sit down and watch telly, but when I'm sitting down watching telly, in my head, I'm not relaxing. I'm thinking you should really be doing something else. You should
Yeah,
do this. It's never actually laziness because it's always something in the back of my mind. So I agree with that. I
yeah,
understand what you're
yeah.
saying.
Laziness is fun. Overwhelmed, functional freeze is not. And unfortunately, in this like modern society where we're constantly feel like we need to produce something,
Yeah.
anytime we're not like actively moving, society has convinced us we're lazy. But really, if you go back to like tribal peoples, they were
Mhm.
only, quote, working about 15 hours a week. They had time around, like our nervous systems were designed to eat berries in a cave, sitting around a fire
Yeah.
telling stories. Our nervous systems were not designed for
For
these
this technology.
for the technology, these techno concrete jungles, as I call them.
Yeah,
We
100%.
are mismatched to our environment, and that's inherently traumatic as well. We are basically zebras in a world for horses.
Yeah.
And I wrote a piece on my blog about calling us outliers, where,
Yeah.
we feel like a moose in a world built for gazelles.
It's so funny you should say that because I also used to write a blog, and one of my favorite blog pieces was when I actually had this epiphany moment that I was a dinosaur in a world where everyone was a fish, and I didn't understand why I couldn't swim and why I couldn't be a fish. And then I come to this conclusion: actually, I'm not a fish. So that's really poignant for me. I get that. I get that completely.
Yeah. But it's been quite a journey. Writing the books has been fun. I recommend everybody write a book, just a memoir of your life, just to help you. It can really help you in terms of
It's
the journaling.
cathartic.
Yeah, it's cathartic. It helps, the journaling helps, the self exploration helps to get to know yourself better. Just all of it has been just a great process for me. And I would like to see more neurodivergent people share their struggles with
Yeah.
addiction, because addiction is so stigmatized that we
Yeah.
don't typically go for help until we've completely trashed our lives. Like maybe we need to start asking for help when before it's a five alarm fire. Maybe when it's a one
Yeah.
alarm fire, we can ask for help.
I would I would love to write a book, and I've had a lot in my life, neurodivergent, sexual abuse as a child, and violence as an adult from relationships, and cocaine addiction for many many years. I would write a great book, I'm possibly sure, but for me, my memory is so scattered due to either neurodivergence or trauma, and also the book thing wouldn't be for me. So the reason I wanted to write a book, and everyone said write a book, but the way that I've now decided to document it is via podcast.
Yes,
Um,
I remember
so
seeing that in one of your
yeah, I
introductions. Yeah.
that's what I done. I thought, you know what, I would like to write a book so my children understand me when I'm gone, because I try and explain to them now, but I know that they're not in the right frame of mind to listen to it. But when I'm gone, I want to leave something behind for them to understand. But I don't have that linear mind where I can write a book. So I decided that I would just make a selection of my own subscribers' podcasts, and every Sunday I go on there and I just talk about really personal stuff, and that's my form of a book. I don't think I'll be able to do the book, but the podcast I think I'll be able to do.
Yeah, I think it's great what you're doing. I've really enjoyed listening to some of your other episodes. I know one thing that we had talked about in one of your other episodes, somebody had mentioned an addictive personality, which is, not really a good or up to date paradigm. That's sort of like an archaic
Yeah,
paradigm.
I you said that to me the other day. So can you explain? You said it to me the other day. Can you explain? It could have been something I said because I always say I have an addictive personality. I
Yeah.
I can't. I cannot go halfway in. You know, I would love to go halfway in, but with food, with relationships, with drugs, with everything, I'm either all or I'm nothing.
Yeah.
That's why I can't drink, because if I'm gonna drink now, I would love to have one drink, but I could never ever have one drink. It's an all in or nothing process. You know, I'm gonna wake up in 8 years and I would have been drinking for 8 years. It's not a one day thing for me. So, you know, I could have said that I had an addictive personality, but I also could have said that that might be from trauma or neurodivergence. So tell me what you got from the podcast, because I say a lot and I don't always remember.
Well, so first of all, the term addictive personality was used to explain why some people become addicted and some don't. But there's a
Yeah.
couple of problems with it because, first of all, if you say you're an addictive personality, that sort of is telling yourself that you're broken, which I hate.
Yeah.
Like, don't even get me started. I will die on a hill that we are not broken, we're wounded. Language matters. If you're
But
broken,
isn't that taking your power back? Like, if I
yeah.
say, actually, I know I'm an addictive personality and I'm going to take my power back and know that about myself and be able to honor that.
So, really, what we find is addiction is a pain response, right? We are
Yeah,
self medicating. Research,
100%.
the research shows that we're self medicating pain when we get addicted. So,
Yeah.
really, instead of focusing on like an addictive personality, let's focus on healing the pain. You know, it shifts by getting away from that label, it
Hmm.
shifts the treatment of how you're going to proceed. If you say you have an addictive personality, that just sort of throws your hands up in the air. I'm broken. There's nothing that can be done. But if you say I'm in pain or if you say I'm wounded, then that means there's a course of treatment to help you get better.
What if you say I have an addictive personality, but it's due to me not having, due to something inside of me being, be some needs being unmet? Because, you know, I've had addiction. I was addicted to cocaine and alcohol for 10 years, and it wasn't like a every couple of weeks thing. It was a big 10 year, I don't know what happened in them 10 years. And
Yeah,
I've been 10 years sober on the 5th of June, and you know, it's
congratulations.
completely and utterly changed my life. But, you know, I think that I lost my train of thought again.
Well, you were talking about the addictive personality. What you need to realize is addiction is a coping mechanism. You know,
Yes,
you think
that's
of
why that's why I done it. So because my addictive personality was with drugs, is because I didn't have confidence, and you know, everyone around me was trying drugs and I was like, no way, I'm dead against it. I've got a really weird moral compass where I think things are really bad and I am quite judgy, I'm going to be honest. So I everyone around me was doing drugs and I was like, no, no, no. And then one time I thought, you know what? Fuck it. After 10 years I thought, I want to see what this is all about. And I saw that it gave me some confidence that I never had
the
before. Like,
liquid
I was
courage
able
for
to make
sure.
eye contact, I was able to be sociable. It stopped me being autistic for a little bit. I don't
That's
know
how
what.
I felt too. Like I didn't feel autistic
Yeah,
um, when I drank. It gave
yeah,
me liquid courage. It got rid of
a
my
100%.
inhibitions. I somehow could figure out eye contact on alcohol that I
Yeah,
couldn't figure
a
out sober.
100%. It really, and I thought, you know what? For the first 2 years, I thought, oh my God, I'm so lucky. This is a godsend. You know, I've been years as the pariah and as the outcast, and this is a godsend. I thought cocaine is something that saves me, you know, I'm allowed to be free. Obviously, after a couple of years, you know, things shit hits the fan and you realize it's not actually a great thing. But the first couple of years, I it was self medication and it was working. So I understand that completely, but it was to medicate myself.
Well, because a traumatized nervous system is locked in a nonstop cycle of fight, flight, freeze, fawn. If it goes on too long, you actually flop, which is,
Yeah.
basically just a full breakdown. but
There was a flop, yeah.
the drugs act as a fast acting regulator to that traumatized nervous system. It
Yeah.
feels like it calms down, at least
It's a quick
initially.
fix.
It's a quick fix. But as we know, quick fixes never really work in the long term.
And they cause a lot more trauma. So, someone said to me the other day, I actually know somebody, and they said, like, I'm really down and I feel like I want to do drugs because that's going to make me better. I said, okay, you might do that tonight. I said, but the problem will still be there. And whether it's next month, next year, or in 10 or 20 years, there will be a point where if you're lucky enough to survive, you will have to fix what is inside you,
Yeah.
because you will keep coming back to it. And I think now I've been sober 10 years, I've been able to fix that thing that was broken, but I wouldn't have been able to do it if I wasn't sober. I would just keep masking it and medicating it with shit.
Yeah, the lesson repeats until it's learned, right? Because
Yeah. Yeah.
once you learn the lesson and you break the cycle, it stops repeating. But that only happens, like you said, with the inner work and getting reconnected with yourself. And when you do get reconnected with yourself, that's a great time to explore your gifts. There's this whole sort of trauma culture now, where I think, especially with the younger generations, they're a little overly focused on adversity. And it's just, you need to make sure you also recognize your generational gifts. Like your generational wounds might have been growing up with the impression that kids are seen or not heard, or we
Hmm.
don't talk about hard stuff, or
Hmm.
whatever the dysfunctional patterns that exist in your family. But like generational gifts that I've had, I did road trips with my father growing up. So driving and exploring is one of my generational gifts. Uh,
Yeah. Hello?
Matt, you
I lost
identify.
I lost you for a second. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, perfect. I can hear you now. Carry on.
So it's just important when you explore your unmasking that you're not just focusing on your wounds, that you also find your gifts. You know,
Yeah, I understand that, because I don't like to. So when I see a lot of and this is absolutely fine if you want to call it this, but it's not for me. I see the phrase all the time, "Oh, sexual abuse survivor," and that makes me feel really uncomfortable. Me personally, because I actually don't feel like a survivor. I feel like, you know what, and it sounds sick. If someone said to me, if you could choose to not have had that happen to you as a child, would you? No, I don't think I would. Yes, it's traumatic and it's cost me a lot of my mental health and a lot of my life and a lot for my children. But I wouldn't be where I am today. I wouldn't have the children that were born from trauma if I didn't. So actually, I don't like the term survivor. I like to use the term thriver.
oh, I love that. So what you're talking about is post-traumatic growth. So,
Yeah,
and
I think God put me in that situation, and maybe it helps that I have a belief in God. I think that's one of the only thing that's got me through it, for me personally. But I think I see it as, if that didn't happen to me, that unfortunate situation as a child, then I wouldn't have the gifts that I had today. God put me there to teach me a lesson, and again from that, the same with the drugs. It was a shit 10 years, and but actually I've grown so much wisdom from that. So I feel like when people focus on their trauma now and, oh, I've been through this as a child, I like to say, yes, I went through it as a child, but you know what? It's had loads of good effects on me.
well, yes, and I had a very toxic, narcissistic relationship that was super painful, and the fallout was terrible. But really, it forced me to do the inner work, and now my life
Hmm.
is just coming up roses because I did do the inner work. I
Yeah,
don't know if I would have been forced to do the inner work if I had never met that
it's
narcissist. So I know what you
exactly.
mean. There's a silver lining to
Yeah,
it, and you come out with a greater spiritual appreciation, a
yeah.
greater appreciation for your gifts. But that's really only if you experience post traumatic growth. Unfortunately, a lot of people get sort of stuck in their trauma
Yeah.
And so I do these healing journey meetings
Hmm.
to help people move on from that and become future forward and solution focused for their life.
How do they move? Like, so the healing meeting, for example, what kind of people do you find coming to your meeting, and how are they healing? Do you talk through it? Because I went to therapy for years from childhood, and the talking through it, that was for me opening a can of worms, and nothing really helped. It didn't help.
Well,
Um,
yeah, we don't
so
do talk therapy where we're talking about the trauma. What we
what do
do
you do? Yeah.
Yeah, what we do is like mindfulness exercises for when
Yeah.
our nervous system gets dysregulated, when we have a somatic reaction. We do
Yeah.
self awareness exercises because oftentimes we have to take a look at the role we played in our suffering.
Yeah.
Would better boundaries have kept us out of that trauma? So we work
Yeah.
on boundaries to protect our progress. Do creative thinking exercises that will help us stop when we get stuck in rumination loops. It's really to help you put that trauma in the past so you're not even thinking about it anymore.
But I feel like to do that mindfulness and everything that you just spoke about, when I was in active addiction, and if you came to me and told me mindfulness, I would have said to you, "Fuck off!
Right.
Mindfulness isn't for me." My life's a mess. Mindfulness is for normal 30-year-olds that you have their self sorted. Now I look at mindfulness and I'm like, mate, everyone needs to try
I
mindfulness. It's so
know.
good. But I feel like you have to be halfway on your journey to be accepting of these things. So are the people that are coming to your meetings, are they halfway there?
Yes, they are because I do my meetings in recovery centers. So they've
Yeah.
already made the change to commit to, putting down the substances and doing the inner work.
Yeah.
Um, and I do a trauma informed program, and it's very important to note the differences with a trauma informed program because modern medicine treats you like a fixer upper self help project. And
Yeah.
that just actually fuels more inner critic problems and lack of compassion problems. Like you're not kind to yourself when you're treating yourself as a fixer upper. Trauma informed meets you where you're at and says, no, what you really need to do is integrate the parts of yourself that you're rejecting. And once you integrate the parts of yourself that you're rejecting, you're going to see real results. It's called shadow work.
Okay, actually, I've heard of shadow work. I'm going to be going down a rabbit hole tonight on this shadow work, but I actually, I actually have heard of shadow work. Do you find that a lot of people that come to you for this are neurodivergent?
Yes, because I do work in recovery centers, and I
Yeah.
and the research shows that nearly 100% of addicted people are either traumatized, neurodivergent, or
Yeah.
both.
Yeah, 100%. And is there a big crossover for the both? Is there a big correlation? And also, we've got children. And they're neurodivergent. How do we stop them having these addictive personalities? Because I do know that my children, specifically the ADHD ones, are more susceptible to addiction. I can see that in themselves. How can we stop that? How can we stop that cycle?
Well, I would say the best way to stop that cycle is you, as yourself, have to be a cycle breaker. So you have to role model cycle breaking.
Yeah.
One, and two, work on having an emotionally intelligent home. We're so focused on like having a compliant home that we're
Hmm.
not necessarily focused on their emotional intelligence. And so, really, a good behavior strategy is more of a growth oriented discipline plan than a compliance oriented discipline plan because a compliance oriented discipline plan in the home is going to have kids hiding their feelings. And we need
Yeah.
open lines of communication if we want them to not go down that path.
Yeah, I think when children see their parent or their adult doing self work, it's a really really healthy thing.
Yeah.
But for the parent to do self work means they sometimes have been on a journey in front of their children that might have disrupted the children, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I think it's really healthy for me, my children, to see me now that I've broke the cycle, but they've been through a lot for me to get here that has marred them, that has marked them.
Mhm.
So I do think it's so healthy for children to see parents doing self work.
Absolutely. We sort of grew up with parents that were, and I think it was just a sign of the times, sort of had low emotional intelligence.
Or
Um,
sweep it under the carpet.
yeah, and a lot of us weren't raised in, the primary mode of thinking was children were seen and not heard, which
Yeah.
isn't a healthy situation at
Yeah.
all. And so it's nice that as a society we've grown and evolved past that into letting kids be their own people.
Yeah, I think it's, with all the bad that's coming from society, there is also really beneficial things that are coming as well. So I completely understand that. But I just only hope that people can be in the right frame of mind to embrace that. And it's so sad because I see so many of these late diagnosed people coming to me, and they've got so much trauma, and they've had addiction problems, and it's so stressful that you want to shake them and be like, no, but everybody has to get to that own point themselves.
Right, right, exactly. You can't sort of push people along. You can maybe
I would love to,
yeah,
but
you can
you
plant
can't.
a seed and never underestimate the power of planting that seed, but you can't do the heavy lifting for them. They have to be
Yeah.
willing to do the heavy lifting.
And people come to me and they're like, okay, I want to do self work, I want to unmask, but I've been doing it for a couple of weeks now and nothing's happening. I'm like, dude, you know what, this is a lifelong journey.
Yeah, yeah. I
You
mean,
don't expect any quick fixes. Maybe for some people there might be quick fixes, but don't, I have started unmasking, but I don't know if I'm ever going to fully get to there or to know who I am, but I'm working on it. I think a lot of people expect this quick fix, but it's not going to be a quick fix for everybody.
well, I have found that as I unmask, I have had numerous like spiritual awakenings along the
Yeah.
way. And those spiritual awakenings also help raise your emotional intelligence. But yeah, as I said, I'm coming up on 7 years sober. And I think I really only fully unmasked because of the book, that Unmasking Freya that you mentioned that I just wrote. But it
Because it's cathartic. Do you think it's because it worked cathartically for you and that's what helped?
Absolutely, because when it comes to trauma, you can't heal what you don't name. You have to give it a voice and a name before you can heal it. So if you
Yeah.
keep it to yourself, you're not going to heal. Yeah, you have to. Part of healing is that somebody has to be a witness to your pain. Whether
Yeah.
that's a close
So does that
friend.
mean you have to go through the pain and you have to embrace it and you have to talk it out and you have to let it out Pandora's box and you have to explore it? If you're going to name it, do you have to go through it all and open that can of
Well,
worms?
so that's where, talk therapy really isn't very helpful. I'm not talking about reliving it. What I'm
Yeah.
talking about is a lot of us haven't even allowed ourselves to fully feel the feelings. So when it
Yeah.
comes to a healing journey, typically you are in more pain before you feel better. Just like
Yeah.
when you start
Always.
at
Yeah.
university, you feel dumb before you feel smart. When you go to the
Yeah.
bank to invest, you feel broke before you feel rich. And with
It's an investment.
Right.
Yeah.
And when you heal, you're going to hurt before you feel better.
Yeah.
It's part of
That's
the
true.
process.
It is a big investment process, and it's investing in yourself, and that's something that I think a lot of us find hard to do, especially us without boundaries. And we want a quick fix, otherwise we don't want to do it, but investing in yourself is taking time, and it's hard for a lot of neurodivergent people specifically because they've never been able to invest in themselves because they've never gave themselves that self-worth. So I think it's really important.
Well, when we talked about those masks, the people pleaser and the martyr both would be so heavily invested in other people that they
Yeah.
neglected themselves entirely.
100%, 100%, which is so sad. But I feel like, though, when I was the martyr or the people pleaser, and I've only just thought about this recently. I was so busy, like, it would be specifically in relationships. I would think, I don't deserve someone really good. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to find a fixer upper. So, I'm going to find a man or someone that's so emotionally broken, and I'm going to help them to heal, because I don't deserve somebody that's really healed because I'm fucked up myself. So, I'll find someone that's very broken, and then I will fix them, and we will live a prosperous life together, which actually never works, because you
No.
have to want to fix yourself. You can't force someone to fix themselves. So I spend a long time trying to force people to fix themselves that didn't want to fix themselves, because I had this idea of who they were going to be in my mind, but that
Mm.
was my idea of them, not their idea of them. Um, so I find that that is a big thing.
Well, and I did that myself. So I talk about that in my books, and it's called a rescuing victim complex, where you feel like you have to rescue people, but you're a victim in a sense because you're helping other people at your own expense. And because you're helping people at your own expense, latent anger and resentment starts to build.
Yeah.
And so
It can
then
never be healthy. It will never be healthy. It will always be toxic.
my rescuing victim relationships, like they have a lot of chemistry. These toxic dynamics have a
Yeah,
lot of
of course.
chemistry, and we mistake that chemistry for it being a good relationship. But I would say one of my healthier relationships had very little chemistry because he didn't want to be fixed, and I was a fixer upper person, and he was happy with his life just the way it was, and I wanted to fix everything, and he had
Yeah.
no. So what happens is either you fix them and then they feel like, well, I'm too good for you now, or
Yeah.
you don't
Yeah. I've
fix
seen
them
that.
and they say, oh, you failed me. It just never works out. A rescuing
Yeah, it
victim
it
complex.
never works out. Normally it's with me, someone's like, "You're trying to control me." And I'm like, "No, I'm trying to make you better." But I see it as better, but not everyone's perception of better is the same. And I do sometimes wonder whether I was spent so much time wanting to fix other people, maybe I was avoiding fixing myself.
Well, that's exactly psychologically what was happening.
Yeah.
Is rescuing victim complexes are like the ultimate act of betrayal to yourself because your
Yeah.
own personality and identity never develops fully because you're so focused on other people. So it's an ultimate act of betrayal to yourself.
Do you think for neurodivergent people, they find themselves in this situation a lot? Is it, people like that drawn to the fixer upper relationships?
I think neurodivergent people do so much masking, the social mimicry masking that I was talking about, that people pleasing just sort of happens accidentally as
Yeah.
part of the
Something we
social
slip
mimicry
into.
masking. Yeah. I mean, these are all masks that we wore to survive. Like, don't be mad at yourself if,
Yeah. It's
you.
got us through. I mean, it's the reason we're still here.
Right. So it's a survival mechanism, but you really can't thrive until you drop the mask. You're going to stay in survival mode as long as you're wearing a mask. You
Yeah.
cannot really thrive until you have found your authentic self underneath.
But what if you started masking so young? Okay. Especially as a woman and neurodivergence, we are specific maskers, and and it's me, I've been through trauma, so that also I'm a masking from that. What if there wasn't actually a me to begin with?
Well, and that's what happens with childhood trauma. Childhood trauma is particularly insidious because there is no me to begin with. Like, if
That's how I feel.
Yeah, if I suffer trauma at 27, there's a before me and an after me. But if I suffer trauma at the age of 4, there is no before me. And that's why childhood trauma is so damaging. On top of that, the child brain is not fully developed, and the trauma is happening while the fear center of the brain is developing. So it gives you an overactive fear center to suffer trauma while it's developing. So you can end up having all kinds of fears in life from having trauma happen while your fear center is developing.
So how then can I, because everyone talks about unmasking, even in my job, I talk about unmasking on a daily basis, but I'm not sure there's me to unmask because I've been masking since the trauma. So What can I not unmask then if there isn't a
No.
me to begin with? What how do I do this?
Shadow work would be where you would start.
Yeah,
Analyzing your shadow, which is the parts of yourself that you started rejecting. Believe it or not, there are parts of yourself you started rejecting even when you were 5. The
yeah,
cues in the room that said this is unacceptable, that's inappropriate. You started rejecting small parts of yourself, and then it just
yeah.
picked up speed. So the shadow work, in my book, I have workbook activities that help you do that shadow work.
Is that in your Unmasking Freya or the other ones?
That's in Unmasking Freya as a combination book and workbook.
In Unmasking Freya, let's talk about in Unmasking Freya. So it's not a fictional book. What's the book? Is it like what's the basis of the book? Is
So,
it a guide? Is it a self-help?
so it would be technically, I guess, considered self help because it does have shadow work exercises to help you unmask.
Yeah,
But it's part educational where you're learning the vocabulary for what you went through, for your symptoms, everything else. It's
yeah,
part memoir because I share stories of what I've been through, not really to just talk about myself, but to use my situations as almost like a case study. What could you learn from
yeah.
what I went through? And
Yeah, that's what I
then,
try and do with my life as well. Yeah.
yeah. So it's part memoir, part, nonfiction, and then it's got a workbook at the end.
And who is the not target market for want of a better word? Who is there, is it someone that's been through trauma? Is it a neurodivergent person? Is it neurodivergent and trauma like, or can you read it if you're just a neurotypical normal like person? Like
Well,
who is this aimed at?
I would say it's aimed at people who are trying to heal their trauma.
Yeah.
And my next
Whether they're neurodivergent or not.
Oh, right, right. And I do talk about neurodivergence in the book as trauma is considered.
A neurodivergent.
CPTSD
Yeah.
is a neurodivergent brain because the architecture of the brain is different.
Yeah.
But I would like to do a whole book about how the architecture of the neurodivergent brain makes you susceptible to addiction because, our dopamine receptors are different and our executive function is almost non existent. Like we have some definite strikes against us that make us more susceptible to addiction.
So neurodivergent people are susceptible to addiction, but then when you put aside of trauma as well, that gives you a kind of double whammy. So you are
Exactly.
even more susceptible to addiction. So you find that a lot of addicts are both.
Yes, yes. The people that I've
So
been
sad.
working with in my healing journey meetings primarily are late diagnosed neurodivergence with trauma.
And do you think that they went through the trauma because they were neurodivergent, so they were more susceptible to it?
Yes, as soon as you start masking, which neurodivergent people almost always do, for
Yeah.
social acceptance, it starts, with
Like
your
people
peer group.
pleasing and
Yeah.
yeah,
But as soon as you start masking, you're not going to be your authentic self. Really, being your authentic self is the best way for your own, identity to shine through, your own boundaries, your own gifts. But really, authenticity just becomes magnetic once you get used to it. Now, if you're like me, I'm a recovering people pleaser, recovering doormat. So I grew a spine in recovery that I didn't have before. And
yeah, you'd never had it to begin with.
yeah, yeah. I never, right. There was, because my trauma also was around, 4, 5, 6, 7. So there was
Yeah,
no before me either.
yeah,
And so, but this is where in the shadow work, you do a lot of inner child work, reparenting your inner
that
child,
yes.
making your
So
inner
inner
child
child
happy.
work is I think, is so appropriate for people like me. I think inner child work is really helpful.
Plus, I feel like neurodivergent people never lose their childlike curiosity compared to
It's true.
neurotypicals either.
Yeah, it's true. Sometimes I feel like an old soul. Like when I was a child, I felt like an old person. But now I feel like a 10-year-old. I look
Yeah,
at my adult
yeah.
children and I think, how can I be in charge of you? Like in my mind, I'm 10. Like you've surpassed me. It doesn't make sense. Being neurodivergent, you feel like an old soul and a young curious soul at the same time.
Yes, it's quite a paradox, and really there's
It
a
is.
duality to neurodivergencies. Like if you think of the symbol for neurodivergency, the infinity symbol,
Oh yeah.
the way I sort of read that as, when I look at that, to me it shows that, to the right you've got gifts of the neurodivergence seeming to go off unlimited if you are in an environment that lets you explore your gifts, but the
Yeah.
limitations can also seem to go off unlimited. But the biggest problem for us neurodivergent people are the life skills, the actual skills needed to keep us alive. We are terrible at.
Yeah. Because of executive functioning and stuff like that.
Exactly. The executive functioning or the lack thereof gets in the way of establishing routines. It
Yeah.
really is consistency that helps you make progress. A focused, idiot will get further in life than a distracted genius.
It's so true. That is, and it is so sad. And also the paradox of AuDHD as well, because in my brain, like I could be a genius. I want routine. I want everything in place. But it's so frustrating because I have two parts of my brain fighting one another because the ADHD can't put anything in place, and it's crazy, and it's a paradox in itself. So I feel like ADHD for that one is a real big thing.
Yeah, there's a constant internal conflict
Push pull.
uh,
Yeah.
struggling between, say, routine and spontaneity. Like, that's a
Yeah.
common one. I thrive in routine, but I like the novelty of spontaneity. Well, how do you do both?
I feel like the ADHD is so unfair. It's so unfair. Like it's been the biggest part for me because I thought there was something wrong, but the only thing that I found that explains it is ADHD, and I feel like that's profoundly different to just autism or just ADHD because you've got this constant internal tug of war where there's like these two people inside of you arguing all the time, and that sets your senses alight constantly.
Well, I think the good news is with people like you advocating for neurodivergency and reducing the stigma and starting to talk about, remember, you can't heal what you don't name. So all
Yeah.
of these conversations about neurodivergency are very healing for the neurodivergent people listening. So thank you for the work that you're doing.
I I think I don't know how it happened, I was a teacher and I got burnt out, and I've had some amazing jobs, but I get burnt out. And then and then I started to be a mentor, and I got diagnosed with autism and ADHD after my children and stuff like that. And I've just kind of fell into doing this thing because I don't want anyone ever to feel like me. I don't want
Yeah.
anyone to get addicted to drugs because they're trying to be something else. I want to catch everyone. It's been such a gift to me to find I am neurodivergent and feel validated. I want everyone to have that gift, and I'm so passionate like about giving people language to express their gift. And it's not laziness, it's executive
Yeah.
function, and it's a hyper focus because I'm autistic.
Yeah.
So it's a plus. I would normally lay there at 4 o'clock in the morning and research autism and ADHD because that's my hyper focus. Now, luckily enough, I get to do it for a job, so it it
Yeah.
makes sense. But it's so important that so many of us are talking about it. I think.
Well, because it helps you learn the strategies to be
Yeah.
successful once you start talking about it. Like, for instance, one very common neurodivergent strategy is body doubling, where it's
Yeah.
just easier to get something done if somebody is in the room with us.
I do that for a job, so I'm actually I'm actually a professional body doubler as well. That's
There you go.
one of my work things. Yeah.
Yeah. So, like, I know my boyfriend is neurodivergent, but he doesn't seem to be all that interested in the self exploration and
Yeah.
or learning the vocabulary. It's a little frustrating, actually. But he
That would
doesn't.
frustrate me too.
But I mean, but not everybody has this like passion for self awareness or like
Yeah.
self exploration, but like we do. But what I was going to say is he really benefits from body doubling. He
Yeah.
just gets things done if I'm in the room, where he struggles if he's just isolated.
See, I didn't know what body doubling was before I done body doubling. Even when my kids were little and I'd have a mountain of washing up, I'd be like, someone please come and talk to mummy while she's washing up. I couldn't do anything without anyone there. And
Right,
I only later on in life realized that that is actually body doubling. I
right.
think once we know the reasons behind the things, and we know the things, and we have the language to describe it, it just makes the world a better place, because we don't think, oh, we're weird, or there's something wrong.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So it's been a great journey for me to get to know myself, and
Yeah.
I would say I had the benefit. To me, it was a benefit of being completely alone during my unmasking, and the reason why I
Yeah.
say it was a benefit is because there was nobody around me. I wasn't in a relationship. I had
Yeah.
empty nested. I was completely living,
Yeah.
by myself independently, and so therefore nobody, it was really my own input, only my own input, as far as my unmasking.
That's really interesting, because actually, when I went on exploration, that was when I was alone, and that was the only time in my life I'd been alone. I'd gone from long relationships, always long, like because I'm a committer. Once I'm in it,
Yeah,
I will not leave
yeah.
you. I'm a people pleaser. I will stay with you until you die. Like, I'm like that.
Right.
But I only was able to do self work when I was alone, and I found that that was really pivotal. So the fact that you've said that as well, that makes me think, actually, yeah, I never really noticed that. It was only when I was alone that I was able to do the self exploration.
Well, the research shows that when women enter a relationship, they gain a ridiculous amount of work, housework,
Yeah.
relationship work, just, there's more laundry, there's more cooking, there's more everything. So, really, when you're single, women have a lot of time to do all the things
Yeah.
that they never got a chance to do.
And I wasn't people pleasing or masking, I
Right,
guess,
right,
or setting myself on fire to keep someone else warm. So I guess it
right.
was the only time I've ever been able to do it is when I'm by myself, because I think a lot of us who've been through trauma or have neurodivergence are in unhealthy relationships because of people pleasing and boundaries. So I think it is normally when we're by ourselves, out of that unhealthy toxic relationship, that we're able to self explore. And I hope that everybody gets this chance, because if you told me 10 years ago or 15 years ago, what's your authentic self? Do you want to do some self work? I would have been like, fuck off. Like, why would I want to do
Right.
self work? Like, that wasn't something that was on my agenda. To me, that was some airy fairy hippy dippy stuff. Like, that wasn't something that would have been for me. But now I am banging on about it constantly, like self work, authentic self. It's such a nervous system. I don't know if it's the echo chamber that I'm in, or whether it's become a buzzword, but nervous system seems to be such a thing now, where before
No.
we never knew what a nervous system was.
Well, I think honestly, hustle culture has led to a lot of dysregulated nervous systems. And I think nervous system dysregulation is like a low key like health crisis right now. There are so
Yeah.
many people dysregulated because from modern life. Because again, our nervous systems were designed to eat berries in a cave around a campfire, listening to stories about the stars. We were not
Yeah.
evolved for this environment.
We've been set up to fail,
Yeah,
really.
yeah, right, right. So what we
and
need
I, and I know why, for the bigger picture. But yeah, we've been set up to fail.
Yeah,
So
so
I
we need to make lifestyle adjustments to make our life more compatible, and a lot of that is slowing down, less is more kind of attitude.
But they don't want us to slow down, because that would be
That will
yeah,
hurt their
that's a
bottom
whole
line.
different subject.
Right.
But I you know where I'm going. But yeah,
Yeah.
honestly, I could talk to you all day. I've kept you too long. But can you talk to me about cortisol levels? What that seems to be another thing that I see. Do you know much about cortisol
Not
levels?
too much. I just know cortisol is produced when you are feeling stressed.
Yeah.
So if you are stressed a lot, your cortisol is constantly pumping. That
Yeah.
cortisol constantly pumping will lead to like a cortisol belly. You can get, like a
Yeah.
little pouch, you know.
So a lot of us must have a high cortisol level that have been in that situation.
Yeah,
So it must, maybe that's why it's in my echo chamber, because that's what's coming up. Nervous system, cortisol levels, narcissists, all of these things keep coming up to me. If you was recommending one of your books for somebody that's listening to start with, tell me which ones to which people and why. You know, a lot of my listeners are women that are neurodivergent, but some of them are men. What book would you say to what person?
well, I would say my book, The Dictionary of Missing Time, which is my memoir, I think that's a real message of experience, strength, and hope. But it's also supposed to be, all of my books are supposed to be a little bit self help where you would learn from my lessons. But
Yeah.
what I find encouraging about the Dictionary of Missing Time is that, there is childhood trauma, there is a narcissistic marriage. And yet, because of post traumatic growth and a healing journey, I came out on top. So there is a rainbow at the end
Do
of the
you think
tunnel.
it's possible for anyone to do what we've done and do so? Anyone? I mean, you know, I've had traumatic times, but there are people out there that have had much more
Right,
traumatic times.
right.
You know, do you think it's possible for absolutely everyone to get to where we are? And you know, I'm not saying we're at this amazing place because we've got long to go, but we're on our journey. Do you think it's possible for everyone?
Oh, absolutely. Some people just might need more support than others. And
Yeah.
really it's about finding your support system. When
Yeah.
you die, there are six pallbearers that take you to your grave. But imagine if you had six people to help you through a tough time. You know,
Yeah, you don't. They show up at your funeral, but they don't show up throughout.
oh, right, right. So you need to find the people that actually show up in real life that
I
aren't
think that
single
makes a
other
big
threat.
difference to self finding your authentic self. That's probably why I found my authentic self, because I'm not surrounded by them the wrong people anymore. So I think that's really poignant. Honestly,
Exactly.
Susan, thank you so much for taking the time to join me today. Is there anything that you feel that I haven't in my normal ADHD fashion? Is there anything, because I'll get off the phone to you and I'll be like, oh, I wish I said this and this and this. Is there anything that you feel like you want to touch upon before we go?
No, I think we've covered a lot of ground, and
Yeah.
I hope if anybody buys one of my books as a result of this, that it helps you wherever you're at. Whether you're trying to conquer an addiction, whether you're trying to unmask, whether you just want to read a feel good memoir. I just hope my work is helpful to you in some way.
Where can we find your books? So you know, everyone says like I have podcasts with a lot of American people and they're like Barnes and Noble. I don't know Barnes and Noble. We don't have that. Do you, where are you? Are you on
I
Amazon? Can I get
am
you on my
on Amazon.
Kindle?
I am on Amazon, and my books are available in paperback, audio, and Kindle. So,
Perfect. So if we went onto the Amazon or Apple, or I don't know about Apple actually, if we went onto any of these things, we'll easily find you. And also, where's your best platform that you communicate on? If somebody listened to this today and been like, okay, I found Susan really enlightening, and you know, because we all have different people we click with. Some people will listen to my podcast and think, fucking hell, Ellie's not for me. She swears, she's a, you know,
right.
someone might think that you are that particular person for them. What platform for me, my platform is Facebook. That's where, you know, or Spotify. Where can we find most of your stuff?
I'm most active on TikTok under Sober Queen of Hearts.
Sober Queen of Hearts. And do you have a website?
Yes, I do. It's SusanEileenBooks.com. And I can send you that
Perfect.
link so when you do the posting, you can just, link it.
Yeah, is that the best place to link you on?
Yes, yes,
And that will take us to everything.
yes. That will take you to everything.
Perfect. If you'd like to learn more about Susan's work or explore her books, I'll make sure all of her links are in the episode description. And as always, if today's episode resonated with you, please consider following the podcast, leaving a review, and sharing it with someone who might find it helpful. And also finding Susan and following her work as well. So thank you so much everyone for listening. Susan, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed this
I
conversation.
I had such a I always dread it at first because I think it's such an ADHD thing. Like I'm always like, oh no, I've got a podcast today. But especially when I speak to ADHD people, you know, I can speak to autistic people, but they're not similar to me. I can speak to ADHD people, but also they're not similar. You know,
Right.
you find someone that's on a similar spot on the spectrum,
Yeah,
and it's very rare for me to find people. I've grown up my whole life, and I don't find that many people. So when I speak to people on a similar spot on the spectrum, I feel like, wow,
yeah,
I feel so good.
exactly. I know. Wow, I found my people. Yes.
Yeah, so and I found a lot of them lately, a lot. So honestly, thank you so much. And until next time, people, remember you don't have to change who you are to deserve understanding.
Exactly.
Take care and we'll speak to you soon. Thank you.